according to some history books. Our species was once one of the dumbest kind roaming this globe. But if we really were in the possession of a so-called daily dementia, then how is it that we, since the beginning of time, we're looking up to the skies, seeking answers to the questions, what is out there? Are we truly alone in the universe? After millions and millions of years, the universe and some of its content is still one of the greatest unexplained wonders in human history. It seems that we just cannot wrap our minds around this black thing we are swirling in. So, what is it that is out there? And was there something or someone providing the first specimens of our species with the needed information for us to think in a creative manner, what over time evolved in an advanced technological era? I am your host, Maria-Anna van Driel, and you are listening to The Next Truth where science and myth meet. A weekly podcast in which scientists and citizen scientists speak about their incredible research, awe-inspiring theories and mind-dazzling paradoxes for you to explore the connections between accepted and noetic science. This week I am speaking with SETI's senior astronomer, Dr. Seth Shostak, about which secrets still lies beyond the limits of our understanding regarding to our cosmic freezer. What do you think thought of it? The intro.
No, that's fine. I thought everything was just fine. I
So,
mean, you know, people are not going to, start writing you abusive emails because of that stuff.
Oh yeah, fan mail. Seth, well, welcome to this podcast of The Next Truth. And I'm very happy to have you here to speak with you. After all this time, I can see you finally. And
Yes.
you are SETI's senior astronomer. Everybody knows you. But how did you get with SETI?
Well, the SETI enterprise, the idea of trying to find the extraterrestrials by, using big antennas and trying to find radio signals, that goes back to 1960. So that's 60 years old now. That's that idea, and people are still doing it basically. But I developed an interest in SETI. When I was a student, I was just sort of interested. I read about it. Yeah. But I was also doing radio astronomy for my thesis work. I did radio astronomy. And I also worked in the Netherlands for 13 years.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, doing radio astronomy there. They have several radio telescopes. So I even did an experiment in the Netherlands looking at the center of our galaxy for signals, see if there were any super civilizations down there. The Dutch are not very big on SETI. They claim they are too sober a people for that, but it was at least one experiment. But then I moved to California for completely other reasons, and I wasn't here terribly long, about a year, before people at the SETI Institute called me up and offered me a job.
And so you took it, and ever since you were there.
That's correct. I took it. At first, I didn't want to take it as a full-time job because I had had the experience of losing a full-time job and then you have nothing. So I thought it was better to have lots of part-time jobs, which I did for a while.
Now you have to explain which part-time jobs.
Well, just asking myself when I lost this job, it was asking myself, what is it that I could do that other people would pay for? And there weren't too many things other than, delivering groceries. That's probably today a better job than it was then. But, writing, teaching, speaking, photography, these are all things that I could do, and I, by the way, still do. I still sell my photos. I still give talks that people pay for. I still write for magazines and newspapers. So I still do that. But it was very interesting. I recommend it to everybody. This is harder in Europe, by the way, but I recommend it to everybody to totally lose your income. That's
okay. Well, no, thank you.
You see that's something wrong with the setup in Europe, where nobody has to worry about their next hamburger. But here you could have that problem.
SETI. What is it standing for? I mean, what is the short term saying, and what does it mean? What is the content of SETI, except for searching the universe for extraterrestrial life forms?
Yeah, well, it's more than that, because there are plenty of people who are looking for life elsewhere in the universe. In fact, most of the people at the SETI Institute are doing that, but they're looking for life nearby. Maybe Mars, maybe the moons of Jupiter, maybe the moons of Saturn. And all of those places are places where there might be life, right? But it would be microscopic. It would be bacteria-like life. But SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So not just life, but the kind of aliens you see at the local movie theater.
You mean the gray aliens with the big black eyes, or what do I have to think about that?
That's what you have to think about, yes. We're talking about life forms that you don't need a microscope to see. They'll come right up to you and maybe, eat you or kill you or do something. Those aliens, those gray guys, they're always gray. I guess they figure, well, we don't want to make them white, we don't want to make them black, and we don't want to make them green. We'll make them gray. That's kind of neutral. Right.
Did SETI already have found a slight kind of proof that there might be, except for bacterial or subatomic particle things living at Mars, for instance, but a little bit bigger?
Well, no. Look, there is no sort of slight evidence, right? It's like sending somebody, 2,000 years ago to Africa. Now, we want you to look for really big animals with long noses that can pick up things, right? Mm. And what if they come back and they say, well, we saw some slight evidence? You'd say, well, what is that? That means nothing. Either you saw them or you didn't see them. And that's the situation when it comes to life in space. We have not found any life in space. And when I say we, I mean humanity has not yet found any life in space, whether it's microscopic or whether it's little gray guys with big eyeballs.
What influenced your interest in astronomy in the first place?
Well, I was interested in astronomy as a kid. I think people develop interest between the ages of 8 and 11. And, whatever those are the ones they tend to keep. And I was interested in astronomy as a young age because I was looking at a book at home. And I built a telescope and all that sort of thing. But the idea of aliens was a particular interest because many of the movies I saw when I was a child, and TV shows for that matter, we had a TV in 1948, actually. Many of the TV shows also had aliens. So when I was much older and I was doing research using radio telescopes, it struck me as kind of a romantic idea that you could use those radio telescopes to actually prove that there are real aliens out there.
Did you yourself saw something in the sky that you say, okay, that I cannot explain?
No, I've never had that experience. No, but I mean, a lot of people do, right? 1/3 of the population believes that the aliens are here, that some of these UFOs are alien beings and all that sort of thing. I've seen plenty of UFOs, but I never thought they were aliens. So.
Because?
Because they were clearly something else.
You could see us. Everybody wants to know. What is it? If it's not what is it?
I was driving down one of the freeways in Los Angeles a couple of years ago, and I saw something in the sky, and it wasn't moving. And it looked like this round thing, and I thought, what the heck? It looked very big, although it was hard to tell, of course. And I thought, okay, maybe the aliens have finally decided to come to Los Angeles for real. But as I drove farther down the freeway, I realized it was what we call a dirigible here, what you would call a Zeppelin in Germany.
Nothing special there then.
Well, yeah, there aren't very many of these dirigibles.
Okay, in that sense, yeah, that is special. But speaking about out of this world, in one of your articles, it's bearing the title "Could Alien Life Exist in a Parallel Universe?" In there you write that a recent paper in the monthly notice of the Royal
Astronomical, yes.
Correct, that one. Society suggested that some of that real estate might be home to aliens who aren't just out of this world. Now that it almost sounds, when you read a little bit further, it almost sounds as if these aliens are just around the corner.
Well, they might be not even that far away. They might be right where you're sitting. If they're in a parallel universe.
Don't say that. That is very creepy what you're
Yeah, but don't worry. They won't get into your universe, so it's not a problem, right? If they're in a parallel universe, you can't detect them. The whole idea that there are parallel universes is an interesting idea, but it's like sitting around in 1500 speculating on what the wildlife might be on any continent at the South Pole. They didn't even know there was a continent at the South Pole, and they certainly didn't know what it was like, and they certainly didn't know that the only real inhabitants are penguins, right? They didn't know any of that, but they could sit around in the the Rothskellers of Europe and talk about it, but if you can't prove it, if you can't send a ship down there, then it's just talk and beer. So that's the way I look at the aliens in the parallel universes.
So we are looking for something we have not even the slightest idea for what we are looking for.
If you're talking about a parallel universe, yes. But if you're talking about our universe, then you know a few things. I mean, astronomers have been busy for 400 or 500 years, and they've learned a lot about our universe, and we can speculate on what the aliens might be like.
You're talking about parallel universes, and which people also make give the thoughts of parallel dimensions. Now, I was talking some weeks ago with somebody from Paranormal Underground magazine, and that man came with a very interesting theory. You've got UFOs made from by people, and they are hovering on the magnetic fields of the Earth by means of the technological human man-made magnetic fields disturbing the Earth magnetic fields could give a result in people seeing things that are not really there, so that a man-made UFO is creating an illusion in the mind of people so that they are seeing aliens. I'm playing the devil's advocate here.
That's an idea. That's like my saying that, there's going to be a giant bunny coming in my front door cooking dinner for me tonight. I mean, it might happen, but I can talk to you about it all I want, but it's not terribly interesting because, if there's no proof of that, then it's just an idea, right?
Yeah, it is. It's a theory. It's an idea. Okay, fine. Right. Yeah.
But I don't see any science in it. So
it can be. It can be that it is a distortion in magnetic field, so that you are going into a kind of trance.
Yeah. Well, to begin with, do you find that you go into trances whenever the magnetic field in your house is distorted? I mean, when you turn on you don't. If you turn on your oven, right? It uses a lot of current, right? Yeah. And as a result, it also produces some magnetic fields. There are some, right? And do you suddenly find yourself going totally nuts and spinning around on the floor and doing strange things? I mean, if you do, you know.
To be honest, no, that's not true. No, I don't know, because I don't know what reality really is. So
Well, no.
but it's a speculation. It's a thought, and I thought it was an amazing idea.
Yeah, well, there are lots of amazing ideas. I hear from people every day who are dealing with aliens. And, you know, there was some woman here in California called me up, and she really wanted me to get rid of the aliens in her house because they were forcing her to teach them English so they could read the newspapers.
Seth, are you still there? I think Fox missed the connection there. Seth. There's something wrong with what the hell happened here? So the connection is gone. The connection is back.
Yes, the aliens. You know what it was? The magnetic field in my room here.
Sorry for interrupting you, but this made me think about what was the show again from Art? Oh God, I forgot his last name. Or that the show was interrupted because of a story of Area 51. Do you remember?
Art Bell?
Yes, that one. There was a show and it got disturbed. It got cut off from the air. So I was thinking about it. You were gone for a couple of seconds. Just in the moment that you were talking about the woman and the aliens.
Yeah. They wanted her to teach them English so they could read the newspapers.
What did you do?
Well, I just told her that, you know, in my opinion, if they really wanted to learn English well enough to read the newspapers, I mean, she should be altruistic a bit about it and just teach them. I mean, what's the harm? At least they weren't trying to serve her up for dinner.
No, that is too scary. Don't do that. I'm going to have nightmares. I don't want to sleep at night when you talk like that.
You don't want to teach anybody another language?
No. I mean, creepy aliens eating people. Don't do that.
Well, they're not going to eat you. Only in the movies do the aliens find us tasty. In reality, we probably would be indigestible.
Okay. I'm going to skip this section because that is too much. No. We have our next generation scientists and thus astronomers. And how do you become an astronomer?
Oh, well, you know, that's the same everywhere. If you're interested in astronomy and want to become somebody doing astronomy research, or become a professor of astronomy at the local university, or for that matter, even just learn enough about the subject that you appreciate your backyard telescope more, you can just, you know, take courses in astronomy. Or if, and you know, almost every school, every university, every college will have courses in astronomy, almost every one. Astronomy and biology are the two most popular science studies, at least in the United States, and I think in Europe too. So that's not hard. But if you don't want to do that, or if it's not possible for some reason, you can always read books about it. There are just thousands and thousands and thousands of books about astronomy. So it's very straightforward. It's like asking, well, how can I become a doctor? It's very straightforward. You go, you take the right courses at university, you go to medical school, whatever.
And SETI's Girl Scout is also connected to?
Well, that's slightly different. That's an education project that the Institute runs with the Girl Scouts to develop materials, educational literature that the girls can study and then get what's called a merit badge. Now, this is a little different in other countries, but that they can show that they know something about astronomy, or for that matter, even SETI. So it turns out, because kids are very interested in aliens, SETI is a great topic to get them to study something more about biology, astronomy, geology.
And that is only in California or the US, because I know that there's also a Girl Scout in Germany, for instance.
Yeah,
Is SETI California also connected with Germany?
No, they're working with the Girl Scouts of America. But you're right. I mean, you know, the whole idea of scouting, I think it originated in England, actually, with the you know, they were called Boy Scouts, and then you had the Girl Guides and so on. But there are programs like this in almost all countries, you know, that are wealthy enough to have these things.
What was that?
Not here. Could be an alien attack on Dusseldorf. I don't know.
Well, I will see it knocking on my door then. Said you are not only an astronomer with SETI, but you also have Big Science, a radio podcast from SETI itself. And which kind of guests do you have in your program, and which kind of topics are you discussing?
Big Picture Science. Yeah, it's a podcast, and it's also a broadcast. It's actually on, I think, like 140 stations or something. And it's an hour every week, but it's thematic. We take a theme. And most recently, the themes have all had to do with the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we will talk in the course of a show to 3 or 4, mostly scientists, sometimes science journalists, about, you know, a particular topic. For example, you know, have we finally learned where the pandemic, where this virus originated? Was it with a bat, or did it have an intermediate host, or, you know, could it have been manufactured? Whatever, all that stuff. So we talk to people about that, and that's the way the show is organized. Thematic.
Yep. Which is the most rememberable program from Big Science for you, and why?
And that's hard to say. Some of the some of the ones that we did a long time ago, which were live back then, you see. And there's a big advantage to doing a live show. A live show means you can take callers, but you know, and if it isn't live and you can't take callers, it's very much harder to put together an hour of material every week. But be that as it may, you know, in the early days things would go wrong, and that was pretty memorable and remarkable. Like, for example, the guests would forget all about it and not show up, and because it's live, you're sort of stuck. Those kinds of things. But in terms of the content, no, I mean, many of the guests are quite interesting, that's for sure.
You mentioned to me once that you are involved in dark matter. I know this is a dramatic topic switch, but how did you get involved in this journey for or the hunt for that what is missing in the universe?
That was my thesis topic, actually, when I was a graduate student, was studying galaxies, and I found that, to my surprise, everybody's surprise, although I was the only one who knew it at that time, they were all rotating, they were all spinning too fast, too quickly, and there was something happening there. That either there was a problem with the data that I had taken or the way it had been analyzed, or there was something else in the universe that was causing this. And I spent quite a bit of time thinking that the problem was me, that there was an error in my computer programs or whatever. But that's how I got involved. That was the first recent, anything since the 1930s, the first real evidence that there is dark matter in the universe. That discovery was taken over by somebody else, a woman in Washington, D.C., and she gets all the credit for it. But in fact, my thesis advisor and I had found it 4 or 5 years before she got started on that project.
You found it?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
So, Seth, what is it? What is dark matter?
Nobody knows. If you can figure that out this afternoon, I recommend that you go check check out the train schedules to Stockholm because you'll have to go there to collect a prize.
Oh yeah? Maybe we should talk after the show then, because I
Well,
have an idea, including how we can and how we are interacting with it. But that is my humble idea. But,
well, you can join many scientists who are trying to figure out what dark matter is.
yeah. Okay. Fast radio bursts. That is also one of the things that you wrote about in several articles. Why are they called fast radio bursts?
Well, yeah, it's because fundamentally it's because astronomers are not very imaginative, right? Fast radio bursts are fast, they're radio, and they are bursts. So astronomers call them fast radio bursts. You see how imaginative they are. But they're like a very short squeak on your radio receiver, sort of like that, very fast. Maybe 1,000th of a second, 100th of a second, kind of like an eye blink, really. And they were found actually by a guy sitting at his desk in West Virginia about a dozen years ago, who was looking at data that had been taken by a radio telescope in Australia. But since then, many dozens of these things have been found. Some of them even repeat. And if they repeat, if they go like that, and then, 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks later, they go like that again, then you can sit on a radio telescope and wait for it to happen the next time. And then you can sort of pinpoint where it's coming from and see where in the universe these funny things are happening. And they tend to be very far away, which means that these bursts represent a lot of energy, because in order to pick up a little radio twitch like that at a distance of billions of light years, got to be pretty powerful.
Do you think that a fast radio burst is similar to the Wolf frequency?
The which frequency?
The wow frequency.
Oh, the wow signal.
The wow
frequency. I thought you said the wolf frequency, because
no.
The frequency of wolves around here is pretty low. Not too many of them.
Okay. Yeah.
The wow signal. Well, the wow signal was completely different in terms of its technical characteristics. And the real thing about the wow signal is that it was seen once, but never again. Never again. And, that might be true of most radio bursts, right? They go off once and then we never see them again. But it's not true of all radio bursts. We find other radio bursts in other parts of the sky. And the wow signal was only seen once. A minute later, it was gone, right? It was not seen a minute later, and it has never been seen since, even though people have tried very hard to find it. So if you only see something once, it's like, it's like seeing a ghost in your attic, right? If you only see it once, the neighbors are not going to be very interested and won't invite you over for dinner again.
Do you think that these fast radio bursts, I believe this is almost a common theory about these bright flashes in the universe, that these bright flashes could contain a kind of binary code from a different galaxy, or primordial code.
Well, I mean, it's conceivable that there's some information in that signal, but given that it's very short, that means that the amount of information that could be in it is very, very low, right? For example, if you talk to me for only a tenth of a second, right, you might be saying something, but you certainly couldn't give me, the Wikipedia entry on Elton John, not in a tenth of a second, right?
But
so,
maybe that small piece of information is just enough to change a couple of atoms so that a new race in the universe can start an evolution, probably on Mars.
Well, that sounds like a theory that is about at the same level of, distortions in magnetic fields causing the aliens to float around. I mean,
I still
you
think
know,
that's a great theory. Yeah, yeah, you can laugh, but hey.
I mean, look, if the aliens are going to go to the trouble of sending signals into space, right? They should put more information in the signals. Otherwise,
Maybe
it's
maybe it is not from an alien species. Maybe it's just like you said in one of your videos, from a star exploding, but or I don't know, a planet or something natural in the universe, but
yeah.
contains a certain kind of frequency or a code, a binary code that is changing a couple of atoms or a couple of, no, not atoms, a couple of subatomic particles that creates new atoms.
Well, it could be, but how are you going to prove that? And why do you say it in the first place? I mean, it's kind of unmotivated. It's like saying, you know what? I think those fast radio bursts are going to wash over the Earth, and they're going to improve the poetry that's written next year. Hey, maybe, but that seemed very reasonable. I mean, there's no mechanism for that, right? It's just, I'm sure these are natural things. In fact, I'm willing to bet you, a cup of coffee. That's my usual bet for everything. I'll bet you a cup of coffee that within 2 years we'll know what causes the fast radio burst, and it won't be aliens. I mean, look, it's like I'm going to communicate.
Why are you so sure about the 2 years?
That's just history. When you look at, how long it takes to figure out new astrophysical phenomena, usually it takes about 2 years. That's not always true. We still don't know what dark matter is. We still don't know what dark energy is. But most things, quasars, pulsars, all those sorts of things, were pretty much figured out very quickly. So I think that that's likely what will happen. But yeah, I don't think it's going to result in a new race of, aliens or anything like that. Hey, look, there's so little information that you can get into it. It's like saying, I'm going to communicate with the, with the Italians by going down to the beach and putting a message in a bottle, right? But I'm going to put that message in a bottle, but I'm going to make sure that the paper is only 1 by 1 millimeter, right? I can't tell them very much on a 1 by 1 millimeter piece of paper.
Do you think that we, except for you saying 2 years, but do you think that we ever will, sit around the table with alien species without being eaten and communicate?
I think we will hear from them. Obviously, I think SETI will eventually succeed and will pick up a signal. But keep in mind, that signal might be coming from a society that's very far away. They could be 1,000 light years away, right? So that signal took 1,000 years to get to us. That's okay. Who cares? But if you respond and you send back a signal, hi, we're the Earthlings. We really are really happy to hear from you guys. Hope everything's all right. Don't eat us, whatever. It takes another 1,000 years for that signal to get back. So it's a very slow conversation.
So we need a time machine.
No, you just have to be willing to look at this the way you look at reading, Cicero or Julius Caesar, right? I mean, it's an old message.
Something just popped into my mind when I said time machine. I was thinking, well, when you have a time machine, let's say, I don't know how it's look like, but then you go back to your own past, send the signal, and then you go to the present, so that the signal is already 30 years on its way. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you come back just in time to get the response.
Or something, yeah, without aging.
Yeah, that's great. The only difficulty there is the time machine.
Somebody has to build it in one way. Okay, I have no idea how that is going to look like.
Well, most physicists are rather doubtful that you can have a time machine that goes into the past or like that, because then you could go back and, just kill your grandmother or something.
The grandfather paradox.
Right. But it isn't so much that they're worried about grandfathers. What they're worried about is causality, right? You want a universe where the physics works in such a way that you can say this cause leads to that effect. But if you can go backwards in time, then that's no longer true, and that causes difficulties.
Many scientists say multiverses are fact, or at least theoretical speaking, it is possible.
Those are multiverses. That's different than time travel.
But if an alien species is existing in a different kind of, well, in another universe directly next to ours, then the connection to the bridge should be very short. Or am I mumbling something here?
Well, it's not clear what short even means if you're talking about connecting two
Bending
universes.
time and space.
Yeah, but their time and space might be completely different. We live in a space that's mostly three-dimensional, right? That's what we, that's our universe is kind of three-dimensional. Maybe theirs is only two-dimensional, or maybe it's, seven-dimensional or something. And time for them is completely different. I mean, it's not clear that you can say, oh, we'll just make a connection between their universe and ours, and we'll go through it, and end up right there. There could be another universe right here in my den, all right, and all the aliens are having a great party and with good food and stuff like that. It could all be happening, but I can't get into that universe, and they can't get into mine, as far as we know. So, while interesting, it's not very useful. It might be more useful if it turns out to be true.
Or crossing that bridge, perhaps Professor Hawkins' ideas, experiments, and writings is probably a solution.
Well, not so much Stephen Hawking, more so Albert Einstein. The idea that you could have, yeah. I mean, the idea that you could have a connection between different universes and so forth. Yeah, but that's still in the realm of speculation at this point.
I heard that there are a couple of experiments with, for instance, the CERN had managed to go into the future, or just a little bit, but it's subatomic particles. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, well, going into the future is not so disruptive. And I don't know the particulars of that experiment. Subatomic particles, I mean, there are a lot of things that CERN has done. For a while there, they thought they had something that was happening faster than the speed of light. And it turned out just to be a hardware problem. So you have to be careful. But, going into the future, I mean, you're going into the future right now. You're moving at the speed of about, 1 hour per hour. Going into the future.
I knew I was fast. Personally, I do believe that there is other life form out there somewhere, because it's a bit arrogant to think that you are the only species in the complete universe. Unless the universe is, well, as big as a marble, as in the movie Men in Black.
It is perhaps worth noting that the idea of aliens, the whole idea that the universe might have other beings in it besides Earthlings, I think most young people are already down with that idea. They're already in agreement with that idea. That's not a radical thing. But what I think is, if not radical, at least interesting, is that this is the first time in the history of humanity where we have enough science and enough technology to maybe find some of that life. And I think that's an interesting thing.
For young people, what is your personal advice that you can give them for exploring the universe, for getting a job that, well, is for looking at the stars and get paid for it? That's amazing job. I wish I had that.
Yeah. Well, we've already talked about becoming an astronomer, and as I say,
yes,
it's no more difficult nor more complex than becoming any other sort of, if you will, professional. If you want to become an historian, how do you do that? Well, you go to school, you study history, you read history, right? It's not so different, right? But the only advice I would give kids, and I have to say that when I was a kid, plenty of adults were trying to give me advice, and generally speaking, I ignored them all. So I don't expect that any young people will listen to my advice either. But one thing I would say is that it has impressed me that it does pay to ask yourself, what is it that you find personally most interesting, and follow that. Don't do what somebody else is telling you to do. Maybe your parents are telling you that you ought to become a truck driver or a physician or, all these things. But ask yourself, what is it that you like, and do that, because you'll be better at it.
Where can we find you, Seth? Except for SETI website, your books and your radio program. Where can we find you? And can people ask you questions?
Well, people ask me questions all the time, and usually they're of the nature of, when are you going to pay me back that loan? But I would say,
no. Yeah.
Oh, okay. No,
That's serious. That's not true, Seth. No.
I'm very easy to find. People can obviously go to the SETI Institute website. My email address, my phone numbers, they're all there. I'm not hard to find. I'm also on social media, not that I spend much time there, but there's all that. If they can remember my name, they can easily find me, because as far as I know, there's no other Seth Shostak on the planet. It's such an odd and unfortunate name. Nobody else has ever given it to their kid.
Thank you all for tuning in this week on The Next Truth, where science and myth meet. Make sure to visit our website, www.nexttruth.com. That is nexttruth, all in one word.com. And let us know what you think about our podcast. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we would appreciate a rating on our website in the section The Next Truth Podcasts. Or if you would simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us too. I am Maria Anna van Driel with The Next Truth. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode.